If you live in London or you come up to town and find you've got a bit of time to spare, can I suggest you go and look at what's happening in Canada Water? And this follows on very nicely from English Cities Fund, actually. We're talking about placemaking in former industrial sites. They say they are reimagining an entire town centre in the heart of London. And 40 years after the London Docklands Development Corporation first filled in the old Canada Dock where the ships from Quebec used to pull up, placemaking is still in full swing. This session is called Canada Water, exploring the essential components of a project that adds value to your community and your projects, and is a chance to look at how working with existing communities is essential to making this kind of development work. We've touched on that already this morning. Well, I'm delighted to welcome the Development Director from British Land, Symon Bacon, to reveal all. Symon.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I'm here to talk, probably got about half an hour to talk through how, from my own perspective and what we're doing at Canada Water and British Land, how we can deliver value through the community and in development. So yeah, I'm the Development Director for Canada Water. I've been at British Land and working on Canada Water for probably 4 or 5 years now, so I've seen quite a lot of the development go through that kind of nitty-gritty end of development, and in particular around the community and engagement. This is the statement that I put forward, and I genuinely believe this. So finance on its own isn't really enough to provide what I think we consider engagement with the community and a place. I often talk about it as design by spreadsheet. So I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room that have had that problem where you're sitting at the spreadsheet looking at it thinking, how do I get this to work? And therefore you start your process of design, going into planning, and then talk to some friendly contractors, trying to deliver against a number. And that is design by spreadsheet. And it works, you can do it like that, but I don't think that really is the way to deliver a place. And actually when I think about community, when I was putting these slides together, the difference between community and place, actually, there isn't much there. They are kind of gelled, and they without both of those things, I think you will really struggle to do something different around placemaking that I know was touched upon in the last session. My clicker seems to have stopped working. I'm going to do this bit a little bit different, and this was because I guess it could be a dry subject, or I could end up telling you a load of stuff that you've heard before. So a couple of days ago, I went on my phone and I thought, I'm just going to pull off the photos of what I've been doing, the stuff that perhaps I've been enjoying. So the top right is a picture of a book that I found in one of the contractors' offices. And clearly I'm a bit of a geek, because I took a photo of it and thought, I'm going to go and find that book and I'm going to buy it. I've not bought it. I've just done that normal thing that people do, which is, these are the list of books that I want to buy. The bottom right is me with some friends, just having a meal. And the middle is me with my kids, enjoying family time. Top left, it kind of struck me that maybe I am getting a bit older, because I've started going around garden centres and looking at flowers. And the bottom left is me at an event, or the best thing event. I mean, it's a corporate event, the VCO, so I don't quite have as much of an exciting life as I thought I had. But the point is, it's the human scale of community. It's the bits that everyone in this room, when you go away at the weekends or in the evenings, the things that you do, they're the things that make a place, and they're the things that the community that you're working around are doing. And I think if there's a couple of things that take away from the next half an hour, this is one of them, and it's to think about development on the human scale, because it's very easy within our professional disciplines to forget that and to go back to spreadsheet design. But what I'm trying to link is both that community aspect, that human aspect, to answer that question, what makes a great place? Where people want to live, where they want to work, where they'll eat, where they'll play, and where you go back to. You don't just visit once, you go back again and again. And I always think it's a really good kind of example and test. If when you go somewhere you think, oh, do you know what, I'm going to come back here, I'm going to bring back my aunt, my uncle, whoever it might be. It's a really good test for yourself to think that was a great place, because you're prepared to bring people to say, hey, haven't I found something fantastic? And I kind of summarize all this into a couple of lines that I think is helpful. So if you take away the human bit, that's one thing, and the next bit is probably the other thing I hope you take away. It isn't just what we do as professionals, because frankly, there's loads of people out there generally doing all the things that we're doing. The important bit, and the important bit about the community and how we're making a place, is how we do it. That's the difference between making something which is generally okay to something that could be absolutely fantastic. And there are examples everywhere of where this has been done well. I've got a couple of slides now that just represent some of the things that I've seen or been involved in, and whether that's a public swimming pool that's meant to be there for 6 weeks, ends up being there for 12 and 14 because it was such a useful thing and everybody loved it so much. Whether that's just events to celebrate different seasons that are open to the public, that people can gather around and enjoy. Whether that's actually creating a space or a place for different businesses around the area to try things out and see if that works and bring other people to it. Whether that's actually more about specific industrial events that has its own community attached to that, which then start using that as a new place. Or just generally doing stuff that people like to see, or lots of people like to see. All of these things are examples of where things have been done in the right way to engage the community to deliver an interesting, fantastic place. And a lot of the time that I found that community aspect in that place is linked back to children, families, to create that sense of enlivenment. So what I want to do now is talk you through some of the things that we have done at Canada Water. I'll talk a little bit about Canada Water as well, although there's a presentation that you can have for an hour just on Canada Water. So there's a little bit about Canada Water, and then hopefully some bits that spark the imagination of what we've been doing and some of the things that we've been trying, given the fact it's still very early days in the development. So if you don't know where Canada Water is, it's the little green squares on the slide. Zone 2, central London. If you go out of London, you get to Canary Wharf in 2 minutes. If you go into London, you get to London Bridge in 3 minutes. And one of the interesting things about Canada Water is how it's positioned in southeast London with the population and demographic shift. It's just really expensive to live in the West. So more and more people under the age of 35 are living in the East. Now, I think, and we think, that's actually quite an advantage. If you're building a new place, a new town, that becomes your catchment. If you're an office occupier, then quite possibly in the war for talent, you might see it as an advantage to be closer to those under 35s. So from a community point of view, it's good to know. Because sure, there's an existing community that's really important, but there's going to be new community that comes in together that needs to be stitched together. So this is Canada Water. The big blue bit in the middle is us. How many people have been to Canada Water? Just a show of hands. Quite a lot. How many people have been just to go to the Decathlon? Well, that's good. So this is people have been to go and see what's going on. Most of the time, well, it's less so now, but a lot of the time at the very beginning, people would come to Canada Water and say to me, oh, Canary Wharf's changed, because they just got mixed up. Or the last time I came here was, I came to the Decathlon. It's strange because there's, 2,000 surface car parking spaces there. A shopping centre that really should be way out of London, and some big box retail. But to give you a bit of an inkling of how important that area is to the local people that live there, there are 7 million people that visit that shopping centre every year. And that shopping centre is really not that great. That's more people visiting that shopping centre than go to the Tate. So the opportunity for us to do something in that area is massive. If we put something which is fantastic and done well with the community, we can do something amazing. It's also worth talking about on this slide here, you will see it on some of the later ones as well, that something quite special about Canada Water is the way it links the water, so just to the south of the slide, the bottom of the slide, you'll see green and dock, and the green, so the woodland and the park. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but you get the principle on this slide. So Canada Water today looks something like this. Great view over London, and in the future will look something like this. And the reason for this slide really is just to show scale. It's a big development. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of towers. It's mixed use. It means we've got to be really careful and really responsible with the way we develop and the way that we engage with that community. This could just be another chunk of real estate that gets put into London, or we can engage with people the right way and create a new place in Canada Water of its own place. So rather than people at the moment come and look at Canada Water, and I'm sure everyone has done it, where they go, oh, Canada Water, it's like, and I'm not going to say anything. But that's what people tend to do. What hopefully will happen is people come, oh, it's Canada Water, because that's where it is. So to give you a little bit of information about the master plan. So we are, as British Land, we are now in a 50-50 JV with Australian Super. And very importantly, when thinking about how we deal with community, in partnership with Southwark. It's a 10 to 15-year scheme. You know, we say it's 10, but it's highly likely to be a bit longer for all the reasons we've just talked about in that panel. 53 acres, so a large piece of land, up to 3,000 homes, 2.5 million square feet of workplace, and 1 million square feet of retail, leisure, education, and culture. So it's big, right? It's a big development. But within that, there are 12 acres of parks, squares, and open spaces. So that's within our own site, never mind what is outside. So those 12 acres include a 34-acre woodland. That's not true, that's what's next to it. That's the next bit. Next to the site includes a woodland, which is 34 acres. So as well as our 12 acres, we've got surrounding us 34 acres of woodland. Now, if you were to go into that woodland, you would see children playing, you'd see people walking their dogs. Early in the morning, there's a set of people doing yoga. So their own amount of community using that space already. There's a park, a very big park. Actually, I always used to think about it as one of London's lost parks because I'm always surprised about how not busy it is. And that has all the usual things you'd expect to be in a park. That has lots of people playing in it, lots of sports. There's a lake there, there's a boating lake. And alongside that, we've got our own bit of culture that while we've been trying to develop the scheme, we've put some events on. Those events have turned into the Printworks London, which in its own right has its own community of following. So now the Printworks have been running for 3 or 4 years. It has capacity of up to 6,000 people. And that community that follow the Printworks, they want it to stay. So somehow we're now challenging ourselves to say, well, if we've accidentally created this amazing thing, why would we get rid of it? How do we enhance that? How do we keep that community that's there and make it part of the place going forward? And this is where that kind of developer magic dust that people talk about come in. It's having the ability to take some of these things that you can see and turn them into something. That's the difference between a regular development, which is okay, and something that is absolutely incredible. But unfortunately, you kind of need to take a bit of a risk. It's really hard to do all these great things as a developer and not go and take a chance in something. The problem I've certainly found as a developer is, well, which one? Because doing them all is really expensive, and you don't know which ones are going to work. So the next few slides, hopefully, are going to give you a little bit of an indication about how we've done some of these things at Canada Water. And to be honest, the list is massive. So if you want to hear more at the end, by all means, come and grab me. I've just picked a couple out that I think are quite interesting. Not so much because of what they are, but because of how we've done it. So this is quite a straightforward one. right at the very beginning when we were looking at master planning. We were in partnership with Southwark. First building coming forward has a public swimming pool, has a public gym. It actually replaces the one at Seven Islands, which is just over the road, which is pretty knackered. It's not a Section 106 requirement. It's not something that we were forced into doing. It's something that we decided to do with Southwark for all the right reasons. And sure, there's a bunch of people in the community that are still complaining about it. You know, it's 2 meters too short, it's 4 meters in the wrong place, and all that kind of stuff. So, but the reality is they're getting a brand new swimming pool and a brand new gym right in the middle of Canada Water. This is worth dwelling on for some time because Teddy London is it's a brand new university. So there's three universities that got together: Arizona State University, King's College, and University of South Wales. And they came together with this idea of developing a new engineering school. They kind of used to talk about an engineering school not for engineers, but it's kind of morphed a little bit more into an engineering school, but kind of the opposite to Cambridge engineering. So children which are actually really inquisitive, they really want to do engineering, but aren't necessarily geared up to go to a Cambridge or an Oxford. And so they were looking for about 60,000 square feet of space across London. But at the time, they didn't really have any money, they didn't really have a business plan, they didn't really know what they were doing, but they were looking for 60,000 square foot. So probably for a year I was talking to them about, you know, where they might go in Canada Water. And bearing in mind, we didn't have planning at the time. So we went round in circles with them not really having any money and us not really having any space. And then what happened was they obviously had a step change in the way that they were committing to this. And their CEO came over to say, look, we don't have any money, we don't really have a business plan, and we don't really know how much space we need, but we really, really like Canada Water, mostly because of how you're doing it and the people that you are. So where we ended up was, we got planning permission for 100,000 square feet. It's a temporary planning permission for like 7 or 8 years. And we're working with our supply chain. Essentially, it's a modular building. That within, they've taken 10,000 square feet. It doesn't really make any money for us. But within 9 months, they can press a button and get 10, 12, 15,000 square feet. And they could do that again, 9 months. And they could do that again. No commitment from them. We've got it ready to go if needs be. And, you know, in all honest truth, we don't make any money out of this. It's a loss leader for us. But it has become really interesting because we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot how to take modular buildings, which when a lot of people hear the word modular, they're not interested in. We can take them round Teddy, and they're actually quite interested in. And also how we can take organizations like Teddy, who don't really know how they're going to get into the real estate that they need for their business while their business is still ebbing and flowing. So this was one of those chances. This is one of those risks that we have taken. Alongside Teddy, there is an organization called Global Generation, and they started at King's Cross putting gardens in skips. And they slowly built the community edge and got people from different schools to help put gardens in skips. And that was probably 15, 20 years ago. They're now at Canada Water building a building with volunteers in the community. Now, it's taking forever, but they're doing it. And it is the largest core wood construction in the UK. In fact, I went down yesterday to have a look, just to make sure that they were still there and everything was going all right. And it's, to be honest, about the same as you can see on screen. But it's taken them a while, but the fact is they're there, they're growing, and they're building the community with them while building this place. And outside, they've got kitchen gardens, they've got education space, all based off the fact that they were given some investment and a chance at King's Cross, and now working at Canada Water. So another example of where that take a chance has kind of worked. But the more interesting bit around this is that both of those things, so Teddy and the Paper Garden, have now come together, not as individuals, but in our mind, in the way that we could do something with this, and develop this area of Canada Water, which is a good, it's meanwhile use. You know, it's stuff that's there. We've got, they're part of the master plan. We're going to build stuff on this area. But what we've realized is that stuff that we learned with Teddy works really well for life sciences. So there's a bunch of people out there going, well, we've got loads of money, we think, as long as we can demonstrate ABC. We need some space, but we can't afford to buy it today. This 5,000 square foot that we can get from you, because we need a specification, could we do that like Teddy have done and then get more and more and more? And we've had a bunch of people really keen on that. And then they love the idea that next to them is the paper yard with all this community stuff going on, with a building going up that's been built by volunteers. And so we've took hold of that and said, actually, let's put this together properly and see if we can create a really interesting little organization of its own right. Now, we wouldn't be able to do that. We didn't sit there and with a bunch of people in a room going, I know we've got a great idea. We're going to end up with life sciences in a paper yard. We did it from piecemeal, did it from trying things and trying to figure out what might work for this community, what might add benefit, how do we generate value with looking at the community, looking at what's required, and making a place. I think these slides have got mixed up, but there's a couple of slides here of what Canada Water, as far as the place would look like. These haven't been designed yet, so it gives you an indication, but it's not quite finished. So this is actually the area which is where the paper yard and Teddy are. But there's more of a residential theme going on, and it's important that the community involved to figure this out because it's going to be right on their doorstep. We've got, as I mentioned, in the open space, this is a town square, which is right outside the station, and a new 3.5 acre park. So along with all the stuff around the outside, this is inside the development. And in particular, we've got some pretty special pieces which we're getting the community involved with, including the dock, so the water within Canada Water. And the opportunity here is really clear because everybody likes engaging with water, so why aren't we opening that to the community? Why aren't we letting people come and experience it? And that creates more of a place. If you imagine you visit Canada Water because you're going shopping and you're going for a drink or you're going to the cinema and you can see a bunch of children enjoying their time, that makes you feel that this is a sense of place. The interesting thing about Canada Water that I think is, I've always been quite surprised at. So as far as a planning application goes, it is, it's one of the large planning applications that was submitted in the capital, but also for Southwark. But not just in scale, because it was an incredibly large planning application, but in physical, the planning application. I mean, this was one of 2 printed submissions that Southwark had to have. And the guy that wheeled it up to Southwark, he said, well, where do you want the planning? And they generally thought it was going to be in an envelope that would go through the door. But yeah, so that's one of the interesting things about Canada Water. And to get there, we had 5 years of local engagement, which is a feat in its own right. So the amount of people that we spoke to be honest, they got to the point where they were like, please stop, just get on with it now. Now, you still end up with a handful of people in the community that are not super happy, but I'm not sure they ever will be. But that set a brilliant stall out from what then we know we need to do. But even now, even with those people, even with all the people that said they were super happy and they wanted to see change, it isn't the what, it's the how we're doing it that makes the difference. Because at the end of the day, even that change is just 10 years of construction. So how we deliver that, how we engage with the community, how we tell people what we're doing is so much more important with just the what we are doing. So part of the bit that I wanted to talk about around how would you do it if you were to look at a new development? Because often I get the question of what's the secret answer? And often it's there on different developments I've worked at before British Land. The answer is there if you look closely enough. You have to start with what you've got. So the example at Canada Water, if you go there now, it's a shopping centre, but it was Surrey Docks. It was all water. In fact, there were people there in the community that they were dockers. They were people that worked at the docks. So by looking at that heritage, that enables us to make them feel part of that place. It's simple things like, why not call the streets something to do with the Docklands? Why not call the streets and the places of parks and squares something around the heritage of the place? Something around, Green and Dock. There's a community of people that sail, that their kids go and play there, that actually the local schools use and the local charities use. And we've now started to run our own events at Canada Water. We've now started to bring the community into the new stuff. And we've not done much, to be honest, and we've had to put it on and provide people with free stuff. But it gets people really engaged with what we're doing. And the results are already, we're a year and a half in? We're already getting the results from doing that. But most importantly, and I hope that's what you take away from this today, it isn't what we do, it's how we do it that makes the difference. Try and not do spreadsheet design. Try and think about that human scale. What is it that you guys like doing at the weekend, what you think everybody else likes doing? How do you put that into your development? How do you get that to link with the community? There's a bit of a video now. I hope you enjoy it. That's it from me.
Come back. I need to ask you some questions. Where are you going, Simon?
Oh, sorry.
Come back.
I thought you pointed like go that way.
No, well, I was pointing at the chair, so it was poor pointing. There were so many questions I've got. We've only got 2 minutes, and I might even eat into croissant time a little bit, because I thought that was absolutely inspiring. And it struck me that we've really learned a lot in the last few decades. You mentioned King's Cross, which are a lot of echoes, I think, of some of the challenges and the way of creating communities that they did there. What do you think have been the biggest lessons for you in the time you've been putting Canada Water together?
Don't underestimate the politics with the small p, the communities. I think...
What people think, you mean, and bringing them with you?
No, less to do with us, less to do with them.
Right.
So you can very easily, for all of the right reasons, get caught between the small politics, between groups of people. Canada Water is densely populated, and there is history between various people across the area. And trying to do the right thing in one area will make it very difficult for you to do the right thing in another area until you know what's going on.
So you have to understand the sort of subtext of everything that happens there.
And that takes years to really understand it.
And I was struck by the way that you have worked. You're not doing this to an area, you're doing it with the people, and that seems fundamental. One of the keys, it seems to me, is to be transparent throughout the process, because if you put everything behind great big construction site walls, they can't see what's happening, then it does feel like it's, you know, outsiders have arrived and are doing things. How did you, or did you, I mean, how do you make sure that people don't feel that it's happening behind closed doors, that they can actually see what's happening? How quickly can you bring people in to look at stuff?
It's a really good point, because there's a lot of communication that we do with the community about what's going on, and it doesn't all work, because people learn and see things in different ways, and they don't all understand it in the way that we understand it. So a lot of the time it is about communicating through different ways, and actually most of the time the best success we've had is just by showing people, and just by being really, this is happening for these reasons. So the dock that I showed you on the screen it's really contentious. So it used to have big trees in the dock, like huge trees, all overgrown. But actually it looked quite nice. It looked like a nice bit of growth and woodland. They were all basically 20 years old. It had all grown over time, overgrown to what it was designed to be. And so our plan was to put it back, but we've got to cut down all the trees. So we've got to, right in the front and centre of Canada Water. So you come out of the station and you see this dock with these trees. And we were cutting it back in February. So clearly there was a big fear about that. But what we did is just tell people, like, we want to do this. To be able to do this, we have to cut this back. If you've got a problem, let's talk about it. And we actually engaged with the community around all of the wildlife. They'd been there for 20 years watching the swans and the cygnets every year.
Every year.
And they told us, they were like, what happens is they start there, then they go there, then they go there. And it actually informed how we did the work.
I remember talking to a developer working in South London, sort of about a wall that was on the site. It was a curved wall that had been there forever. It was not a particularly lovely wall, but what was interesting was that generations of people had sat on the wall. So the wall had become a thing. And so when the developers were talking to the community, they discovered that the wall had this rather important psychological place in their lives. And so they really made a feature of it. And I'm guessing it is little things like that. So it's about the cygnets. It might be about, you know, just a little bit of construction that doesn't look anything to you, but actually has real meaning for the local people.
Absolutely. And I guess that's what I was trying to do with the human scale point. You know, it's so easy to forget that, and also kind of begin to think that that's not important because of the role doing. There's lots of other important things in the profession. But if you don't do those human scale things and think about what people really want and need, you miss the point of what you're trying to create overall.
When we talked a lot about social purpose during the course of this morning, but I also think that when you see these big projects, it is, you know, it's what they did in King's Cross. You've inherited the gardens in the skips. It's the other sort of community projects you've already got up and running, and actually, no, they're not going to make you any money. In fact, they might cost you a few bob, but actually, when you look at the real benefits to you as a developer, to your relationship with the people who live there, actually worth, you know, a huge amount.
So a good example that I gave to our RESi sales team was that if we don't do some of these things, we are going to go out and try and sell 183 apartments in a tower in a Tesco car park. That's what it's going to look like, because it's a tower in a Tesco car park. All this other stuff makes people feel comfort that it's going to change, and it is a place. It
was that shot of the kids with their fishing nets in the water. That's the key to it. Been fantastic. You must all go down and have a look. I'm certainly going to go and have a look. Thank you very much indeed. Symon Bacon.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Simon.